is the lineup in the city centre of Birmingham. Phil Thomas in the bright leader's yellow jersey, as he was here a year ago, and on that occasion it was Phil Anderson the challenger. But tonight, of course, it's Malcolm Elliott and Steve Jockin who are closest to Phil Thomas. So away they go, 45 laps of the city centre, and Mick Bennett will take us around the course.
Well, we've almost got totally the opposite course to what we had at Cardiff last week. We've got a very tight start outside of the council house here in Birmingham. Swing sharp left, slightly downhill along New Street, approximately 200, 250 yards. Quite a difficult part this, because they have to brake very tightly as they come up Temple Street, and this must be the hardest section of any course that we've had so far in the series. Very bumpy, very narrow, and quite a hard climb after 45 laps of racing, which will be the distance tonight. The riders will be out the saddle, perhaps all the way up here, to keep the gear rolling round. Then they have a very tight left and a very sharp right again into Temple Row West. This again will be hard, because they'll be recovering from the climb there, going a lot faster than what they think they'll be going. As they swing sharp left into this 250, 200 yard finishing straight along Colmore Row, again slightly downhill and dips just towards they come to the finish line, as we can see on the camera now.
And so the battle has begun, and Steve Jockin is on the front. The British National Road Racing Champion completes the first lap, and the yellow jersey of Phil Thomas is right behind Steve Jockin. So Thomas determined to now keep this yellow jersey through to the end next week in Glasgow. Just 2 races left for him now. He won the series last year, of course, and his challenge we would expect to come once more from Malcolm Elliott. Just to remind you of the overall situation at the moment. After 4 events so far, Thomas is the overall leader with 24 points. Steve Jockin from the Isle of Man in second place with 22. Malcolm Elliott with third place with 19. So it's a very close affair at the top, and Steve Jockin really has a chance now of stealing this, and the Modusol team will be seen in the action tonight, I think, in defence of Steve Jockin.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see the tactics tonight, Phil. I mean, quite obviously Steve Jockin isn't going to sit on the back of Phil Thomas and be content to watch him. He's taken the race right from the gun, and he's on the front now, and it's interesting to see the yellow jersey in second place overall right from the first lap, up there trying to make something of it. Shane Sutton's tucked well in there, no danger overall, and Phil Baton with Steve Fleetwood and Allan Peiper. Steve Fleetwood's got to keep his eye on Allan Peiper, who's leading the points jersey for this first sprint at least.
The whole field winding its way round, going down now into New Street. Allan Peiper on the front. Allan Peiper had terrible bad luck a week ago. He wasn't able to come here, and he missed the drenching everybody received at Cardiff, because the flight he was due to take was in fact cancelled at the last minute, and he had to sit at Brussels Airport. So Allan Peiper, a very lucky man indeed, I think, to still be wearing that green jersey as leader of the King of the Sprints tonight, because good progress was made throughout by Steve Fleetwood last week, and in fact Fleetwood is now only 4 points behind Peiper in that competition. So Peiper in first place, knows this circuit extremely well. He was with Phil Anderson here a year ago, but Anderson left him behind to go and lap the field alone. So Peiper on the front, and Shane Sutton watching the action over his shoulder there. Stephen Roche also here on the far right now behind Steve Jockin. So there's quite a number of riders, it seems, Mick, now coming back into the action after that terrible day in Cardiff last week.
Yes, it really was bad. I mean, torrential rain an hour before the start, and it was still raining 2 hours after the finish. And as I said then, it's difficult, and Phil Anderson's putting a little bit of an attack there, eased himself towards a break. As I said, it's a little bit easier tonight because there's more oxygen about. We've had that downpour that we had at Cardiff, which was about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. So there's a lot more oxygen in the air, so consequently the racing will be a lot faster. It's interesting, Phil, to see them go up this climb, because it really is quite a severe test. We can see the faces of both Stephen Roche and Phil Anderson screwed up there as they take this very sharp left and right-hander to come into the finish straight.
Well, this is Roche in second place at Bristol behind Sean Yates, when both riders did lap the field, of course, and that was the embarrassing one as far as Phil Thomas and Malcolm Elliott were concerned, because they were lapped. So Roche is still on the front now. Phil Anderson in the bunch here, of course. And Phil Anderson, let's not forget, was last year's winner. And Anderson is only too well aware that the battle for the King of the Sprints is a tough one. And that it takes a determined rider to be able to put on that green jersey.
You've got to always be close to the front in those sprints, because if you're at the back and you see the sign 3 laps to go, there's no way you can get up. So you've got to be very aggressive. You've got to be constantly near the front of the bunch, ready for those sprints, because you only get 3 laps to go, and 3 laps on a very tight circuit, as you have in the Kelloggs series, it's very difficult to get up there. So you've got to all the time be aware and be near the front.
Well, Anderson's not too near the front at the moment, and there is an attack underway, and this is looking a very good attack indeed. Stephen Roche of Ireland going clear and taking with him Shane Sutton of Australia. This is a very, very good move, Mick.
Yes, it is indeed. They're both very good climbers, very light, so they'll find that climb up Temple Street quite easy to take. It's interesting to see you've got Sid Barris protecting Phil Thomas's interest at the back there, but Shane Sutton's no man to get away with in this position, because he's got one hell of a sprint on him.
So the two leaders go through. They've got a lead of about 50 yards over the field. The field being led now by Phil Anderson. Anderson just checks behind him. He finds that Allan Peiper is sitting in his slipstream, and the field are now beginning to be strung out. Well, this is the end of a long season for the majority of professional cyclists, of course, and Ian Bambury came away from Leicester this weekend with his first ever gold medal in the British Pursuit Championship for professionals, and before that he had in fact won 6 place medals. So at last the goal for Ian Bambury. I'm sure he'd like to be in the action tonight. He may find, of course, he has to work for his teammate Steve Jockin to try and bring him up from that second place overall. However, Stephen Roche on the attack at the moment. Now perhaps you can tell me, Mick, as regards the weather tonight, which is now perfectly dry, and last week in Cardiff, which was extremely wet, will the riders have changed the tyres or not?
Well, quite probably, Phil. They'll all be riding silk tyres tonight, which are a lot faster to... The tyres have got tubes in them, but the tubes are stitched into the tyre, so that it makes for very quick wheel changing and very quick tyre changing also. Silk tyres tend to be a lot faster because you can put a lot more pressure into them. And these tyres they're riding tonight, and the pressures in them are probably, to give a comparison, are probably 5 times the pressure in these tyres than what you get in a normal car tyre. So they'll be able to feel a lot quicker on the bikes and consequently corner a lot quicker, which is where you get the gaps appear and why you get the distances appear between the front and the second groups.
Well, Allan Peiper is the only rider so far to bridge the gap here and go straight to the front, so Stephen Roche will welcome the arrival of the strong Australian. Peiper, of course, his tactics now is to try and slip the field so that when the King of the Sprints lap comes up, and let me just remind you that the points for the King of the Sprints are 5 at 3, 2 and 1. We'll have 3 sprints tonight, and the overall leader is the man who scored the most in the series so far. So here we have Peiper, the leader in the green jersey, joining on the attack now. Stephen Roche and Shane Sutton with him. And really, Steve Fleetwood is the rider we should be seeing at the front of this bunch now, but instead we're looking at Tony Doyle, silver medalist in the World Pursuit Championship just 2 weeks ago in Spain, followed by Steve Jockin. Then comes Phil Baton. Well, Peiper knows this circuit very well. The overall situation as regards the King of the Sprints, before we have the first sprint of the evening, is Allan Peiper leads with 27 points. Steve Fleetwood is in second place with 23. And Phil Baton is in third with 11, and that is probably why we're seeing Baton here in the main field now in another green jersey, the jersey in fact of his sponsor, not the leader of the competition, in third place. So this is a good attack by Peiper.
Yes, indeed, Phil. Interestingly enough, Shane Sutton's there as a passenger. He hasn't done any work at all yet. Obviously, he can't do any work because Steve Fleetwood's a danger to Allan Peiper in the King of the Sprints, and as you said, Steve Fleetwood should be up there along with Allan Peiper to go for this first sprint. So it'll be interesting to see if Shane does his job and stays behind and tries to bring this break back to the bunch, which indeed he should do. But we've got Phil Anderson on there, who's always a strong lad, as he proved here last year, and he's got to get up to that front, and so has Steve Jockin. He needs maximum points. He can't let these points slip away from him.
So 2 laps to go to the first King of the Sprint, and it's Phil Anderson of Australia trying now to close down the gap on these 3 riders. Peiper on the front, Roche in second place, and Shane Sutton assisting not one little bit on this attack. He really would welcome the bunch to come up on him, because of course this would let in his teammate Steve Fleetwood, rather, the brother of Les Fleetwood. And in fact Peiper being left to do all the work.
Yes, indeed. Obviously he needs the points. He's only 4 up on Steve Fleetwood, so he's trying to secure it by gaining more points in this first sprint. Anything he can do, Steve Fleetwood's got one hell of a job to get those points back off him in Glasgow next week. But we have Shane Sutton, interestingly enough, he's riding a spare machine there. He's had mechanical trouble just before the start, so he's riding a spare machine, and it's one of the lightest machines in the race. It's made of carbon fibre. Interesting to see how he does later in the race. With the climb up Temple Street, it should assist him a great deal.
Well, the hooter we heard then, that means 1 lap to go now for the first of the night's King of the Sprints, and immediately Tony Doyle livens up the attack from the main field. Phil Baton in second place, Malcolm Elliott third, Thomas never far behind in fourth slot, but these 3 riders are in with a chance now to try and take the points on the first sprint of the night. Allan Peiper, remember, having missed out last week, anxious indeed to improve his overall lead in this classification. First man back to the town hall now will receive 5 points, 3, 2 and 1. Roche on the front, Peiper in second place. Shane Sutton, of course, is a very, very good sprinter, and if it's necessary, I think he'll try and take these 5 points and reduce the advantage of Allan Peiper. But this has been a good attack. The first rider is a left rider, so watch out for the 3 behind, because this time is the sprint on the line now. Peiper at the front, and seemingly no one can go with him, so Allan Peiper takes it. Allan Peiper takes it. Stephen Roche is second. Shane Sutton was only in third place, and Phil Baton looking for 1 point here on the left in green. Steve Jones goes to the right, Phil Anderson in the middle, and Baton trying desperately for that 1 point. I think he came too late. So Phil Baton misses out, and that was a very, very good piece of tactical riding by Allan Peiper here in green.
Well, while we've been watching the sprinters in action, I'm in the pits here with one of Britain's great middle-distance athletes of recent years, Ian Stewart. Ian, you're a bit of a fan of cycling. What's your impression of the athletic ability of these guys?
Oh, I think it's pretty fantastic, really. It's not comparable with distance runners because it's very difficult to compare 2 sports, but what always never sort of ceases to amaze me is how they do so many races so close together, whereas it at least takes us at least 7 days to get over a race. These guys are racing every day.
Yeah.
You know,
you've been following the series pretty closely, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's been great, the series. It's got to be good for cycling. Very good.
Smashing. Good to see you, Ian Stewart. We'll be back with more action from Birmingham City Centre in a couple of minutes' time. Back here in Birmingham City Centre, we've seen the Australian Allan Peiper take a giant stride toward the King of the Sprints title with victory in the first sprint of the evening. Let's check on that full result. Their victory for Allan Peiper, 5 points for him. Stephen Roche second, Shane Sutton third, and England's Steve Jones fourth. Right, let's get back with the leaders now with Phil Liggett.
And it's Allan Peiper, the strong man in this trio, out in front. They've broken away now. They've been in the lead for some 10 laps. That's about 5 miles. And progress at the moment is laboured but surely. So Peiper looks over his shoulder, changes there, another gear goes down, brakes sharply, turns left, and Shane Sutton hangs on grimly, because it looks to me, Mick, as though Shane isn't going quite as well as we might expect.
No, he's been fairly quiet in the whole of the Kelloggs series up to now, but he told me that he lives here in Birmingham. He's trained very hard for this one. He goes home in 12 days' time, and he's determined to take at least one of the titles home with him, and he's certainly out to prove that tonight.
Well, this is an enormous crowd in the city centre tonight, and this is the sort of lead those 3 leaders have, because here come the pack, working very hard. This is Malcolm Elliott now trying to break away from the field, and at the moment there's no sign at all of the yellow jersey of Phil Thomas. He can't allow Elliott to escape this field tonight, because that would play right into the hands of Malcolm Elliott. Here are the 3 leaders, Roche on the front now, and the 3 leaders here at this moment in time are allies, because although they all have different sponsorships, Stephen Roche, Allan Peiper and Shane Sutton have one common enemy, and that's the field, working together, sharing the pace and trying to break clear of the field.
And indeed, that's just what they're doing. They're attacking this climb up Temple Street and how hard it is. And Allan Peiper's not giving any quarter to any of them. He's driving this brake on well down in the handlebars there. Incidentally, interestingly enough, Allan's probably riding the widest handlebars in the event. They're very big, allows him to get very low. Because he's got these big, wide, muscular shoulders, it allows him to breathe a lot easier. And most of the riders have handlebars that are all tailor-made for them, so although they all look the same, they're virtually all tailor-made for each individual rider.
Well, these bikes, of course, costing anything up to £1,000 a piece, and the French have developed some wheels now that are actually costing £500 each. So that's the sort of money, but of course the overall prizes and contracts in this Kelloggs series is £50,000. And 3 riders now trying to do what Phil Anderson did on his own a year ago. But this is a marvellous attack by Malcolm Elliott now. Anderson moves somebody out the way there, pushes them out the way to get back to the front. He's looking now for some help, and it's Phil Baton in green who comes through willingly. Malcolm Elliott on the attack. He knows if he can catch the 3 men in front without Phil Thomas, then he will be back in yellow by the time this race ends in Birmingham tonight. And the crowd are loving every minute of it.
That was Steve Jones on the front of the bunch, and Phil Anderson. Steve Jones is a teammate of Malcolm Elliott. They both ride for Rally, and Phil Anderson saw Steve using slowing down tactics on the corner. An ideal place to use it because everybody breaks into these corners, and Steve saw an opportunity to slow them down, thus giving Malcolm that little bit more time and putting that little bit more distance between him and the bunch. But Malcolm Elliott, you've got to take your hat off to him, Phil. He's really got the race between his teeth. He's not content to sit in and play a waiting game. He knows that break of 3 that's gone up the road is probably going to be the winning break, and he wants to get with it.
Well, Phil Baton is showing no respect for the double Commonwealth Games gold medalist before he turned professional this year. He's bringing the field up with all the energy he can muster. But while these counterattacks come, then it's not going to help these 3 riders out in front to lap the field tonight. 880 yards around the city of Birmingham. It doesn't sound very far, except when you're averaging perhaps a 1/10 of a mile an hour faster than the field chasing you behind. The average speed of these 3, 26.7 miles an hour at the moment. And Stephen Roche giving it everything he's got. He's used to lapping the riders, of course. He lapped the field with Sean Yates at Bristol, and that was the occasion that Malcolm Elliott and Phil Thomas would prefer to forget, because they were lapped by Stephen Roche and Sean Yates and eliminated from the night's race. And Elliott trying, and the gap, I think, beginning to close between Elliott and the 3 leaders, but Phil Baton will not give up at the back. Now, why is Phil Baton chasing Elliott when they've allowed 3 riders to go away?
I've really no idea. Perhaps Phil Baton realises that he's also climbing up the GC sheet, and he realises that Malcolm Elliott's the guy with the finish. He's the guy he's got to get with. Phil loves these sort of conditions because it's very hilly around the Temple Road, Temple Street area, and he knows that he's recovering well. He's a very fit lad. He's been up there in every event, and for Phil to attack off the front, he can do this continually, lap after lap.
Well, Baton, of course, doesn't live too far away from here. He lives in Kidderminster, not too far away. Had a big applause waiting for him when he came up to the start line tonight. Very, very popular rider indeed. Something like 20 places he's had in the top 5 this year, but very few wins because he doesn't possess the sprint. Well, the leading 3 come through now, and it looks as though they've picked up here Steve Fleetwood. Now, that's a surprise. Fleetwood is obviously a lap down. He won't be allowed to stay with the leaders. He'll be pulled out, I'm sure. But Fleetwood, of course, is chasing Allan Peiper for that King of the Sprints title. So Fleetwood's certain to come out when the judges spot him in with the leaders, but for the time being, tagging along here on the back of the group. Roche on the front, Peiper in second place, then Shane Sutton, and he'll be shocked too to see Steve Fleetwood, because of course Fleetwood is his teammate.
Although it's helpful to have you.
Bernard Taylor in the pits, the Falcon team manager. We've got Phil Thomas right back in the pack and in danger of losing touch, the yellow jersey leader.
Yes, we have, with the 3 riders away and Malcolm trying to get up to them. Malcolm's 5 points behind, and he's very rapid. If he gets up to the break, he's likely to win it and take the 10 points and leave Phil struggling at the back, and he could close the gap, and it'll make it very interesting, the last one, but we don't want to leave it on the last one.
You're a bit worried, aren't you?
Very worried, yes.
Right, let's get back to the race.
Thanks very much.
So Phil Anderson, the rider who a year ago lapped the field here to an enormous cheer, because everybody felt he'd done enough to win the series overall, but of course it's points that count in the championship series, and it's placings on the line. So a lap doesn't necessarily mean automatic victory, but Anderson nonetheless cheered the crowd here to a marvellous performance. But tonight, a little bit subdued Phil Anderson. He's had a poor season by his own standards. He crashed in the World Championship 10 days ago. He also crashed in the Tour de France. And because of these two crashes, he's seen these three men escape and go ahead of him by now half a lap of the circuit here. Roche giving 100% of energy. Roche missed out on the World Championships this year, but he's ridden extremely well in this series. He's finished second to Sean Yates at Bristol. He's unlucky not to have won a race in the series. He tries very, very hard indeed, but unfortunately Roche doesn't possess the fast sprint finish necessary to perhaps snatch victory overall.
Unless Stephen can put in a late attack at the climb, the only climb on the circuit, I can't really see Stephen winning the sprint, because he's got Shane Sutton, who's probably one of the fastest men on the British scene at the moment. Allan Peiper, who's never short of a sprint, as he's shown in the King of the Sprints competition. So my money's either on Shane Sutton or Allan Peiper at this moment.
Peiper on the front. Shane Sutton, one doesn't know whether to believe that Shane Sutton is actually tired and cannot work with the two riders at the front, or whether he's playing a waiting game for that checkered flag. He came here on a sponsorship, having won an airline ticket in a race in Australia, took full advantage of it and came for a season's racing in Britain, and what a good season he's had. A very, very likeable rider. But you can see the sort of gap they've got now. This is Tony James on the front of the group here, Sid Barris in second place, Tony Doyle in third place. So the riders who we so often see at the front of these races are here again. Anderson puffing and blowing with the white hat on in about fourth or fifth place, and he really doesn't look at all happy. Phil Thomas in yellow. His only concern here is to keep an eye on Malcolm Elliott, and at the moment Elliott in that white jersey on the outside is also in the pack.
What's amazing is the pace and the speed of this bunch, and that break that's practically lapping them now. He's so incredibly quick. We've gone from about 60 starters down to about 20-25 riders left in the race, and these 25 riders split up over approximately 100 and 150 yards of the whole circuit.
Well, the wide open streets of Birmingham City Centre tonight, and the field is beginning to be lapped now by these riders. We're seeing a small bunch of stragglers here, and the powerhouse of Stephen Roche and Allan Peiper are the two riders doing all the damage. There's the field goes through. We can see now right along the top of the circuit, along Colmore Row, and then the figure of the small group, and the boy in white there's Mick Morrison. Well, he finished in fourth place in the series last year. So there's a surprise, and I can see Danny Clark, the rider with the white stripe down his helmet. So Danny Clark is also being lapped, and of course he won at Cardiff just a week ago in those atrocious conditions, and through go the three riders. So Danny Clark and Mick Morrison, among others, are out of the championship tonight. So lapped riders, of course, are eliminated from the race tonight. They quite eligible to come back again to Glasgow next week for what will surely be a grand finale, because the top two riders, Elliott and Thomas, locked together in the main field, but Allan Peiper now trying to open it up for the final race in Glasgow next week. Peiper on the right, never afraid to hit the front and set the pace. Stephen Roche trying to hang on and also contribute. And Shane Sutton, well, one must ask the question, is he tired or is he shamming?
I shouldn't think he's shamming, Phil. I should think he's saving every ounce of energy he's got left for that final sprint, because he knows that he's home in a week's time, back in Australia, and it's all down to this last race for him. This is the favourite one. This is the one he wanted. He lives in Birmingham. I think he's saving every ounce of energy he's got. He's allowing Allan Peiper and Stephen Roche to tire themselves out, and barring accidents, my money's on Shane Sutton.
Well, Peiper's doing all the work at the moment, Mick, and in fact they've been out in front now for about 19 laps. This is a tremendous chase indeed. Peiper on the front, Roche wondering about Shane Sutton. I think it's very disconcerting for the two leaders to assess the strength of Sutton. He's a wily Australian, he's a very tough man, he's won a number of races in Britain this year. They know his ability, and perhaps they're still trying to work out just what his physical state is at the moment. But really, the action coming from Allan Peiper, I think he's the strong man in the breakaway, and it's not going to be long now before Peiper comes into sight. This is the main field again, led by Tony James. They come up through Colmore Row.
The way the bunch have eased off there, I think they've all resigned themselves to the fact that they know they must have had signals from the pits and the mechanics, and there they come into sight, into Colmore Row now. The bunch must know at least that they're going to get lapped.
Well, the three riders now are coming up. They have the leading group in their sights, and the determination on Stephen Roche says it all. Now, if these three riders lap the field, well, the race will be over for the night as far as the main field is concerned, because these riders will have gained a lap. And here we see Dudley Hayton at the back of the string as the three chasers come into sight. So what the referees will decide, that the main field must come out of the race with 5 laps to go to the end, and these three riders alone will complete 5 full circuits of the track and fight out the finish.
Allan Peiper's not given any quarter whatsoever. His bike's twisted and pulled all over the place. His face is screwed up in agony. He's puffing and blowing, and so is Stephen Roche. And still Shane Sutton sits there and doesn't contribute. He must know now that Steve Fleetwood's chances of winning that points jersey are obsolete, because Steve's not up there. He's been lapped. He's been pulled out of the race. And with it, I should think all his chances of winning that King of the Sprints jersey have gone out the window with it.
Well, progress now is very, very certain indeed. The main field, the elastic is broken. Look at the face of Peiper now. Determination. He wants to do what Phil Anderson did a year ago, lap the field whilst wearing the green jersey as King of the Sprints. And Sid Barris at the front of this group is probably unaware that the leaders are right behind. Peiper, sorry Mick, but I was about to say Peiper is not actually giving way at all now to Stephen Roche.
Interestingly enough to see, they're all looking down, searching for the right gear, which shows that this climb is taking its toll as the race gets longer. They didn't change gear in the early laps because they got the effort in the legs left, but now as the race gets on, the hill gets longer and it gets steeper, and you certainly feel it in the top of your thighs as they sting when you're trying to punt the pedals round. So they're looking for the gears, searching for the gears, making sure they've got the right gear before they get into the climb.
One of these machines are carrying 14 different gear ratios, but on a circuit like this, the riders might use perhaps 7 or 8 of them just to vary the pedaling speeds, that fraction of an inch difference, because all gears are measured in inches on bicycles. And these are the three leaders now. Stephen Roche on the front, Peiper putting his head down a little bit to hold on to the speed of Roche. Roche has this magnificent turn of speed, and I think Peiper now is gritting his teeth to hold on to Stephen. 2 laps to go to the special sprint of the night, the second one of the King of the Sprints competition, and of course a formality now for these 3 riders in front. So Allan Peiper's attack, even if it were to end this evening, it will certainly mean he's won 2 of those special sprints. Roche on the front, Peiper in second place, and still the shadow of the Australian Shane Sutton, and everybody asking the question, can he or can't he win the stage tonight? Well, if they do catch this field, of course, then they will be 1 lap ahead, and the rest of the race tonight will all be eliminated with 5 laps to go, and these 3 riders will ride the course alone for 5 laps. Of course, there's always a problem getting the riders off the track, but we'll have to see what happens tonight, because this will be a new dimension of this championship series here. We haven't seen it happen before throughout the series since we began in Manchester with that brilliant victory by Sean Kelly. Then we had Malcolm Elliott win at Nottingham. Sean Yates triumphed at Bristol, and it was Danny Clark in that deluge at Cardiff a week ago. And Clark is already out of the race tonight, lapped by these 3 men who are now coming up to the tail of the bunch, and that is a magnificent performance, because they've taken half a mile out of some of the finest international cyclists in Europe. And at the front, it's Tony Doyle, not wanting the embarrassment of seeing his silver medal in the World Championship 10 days ago tarnished by being lapped by Allan Peiper. Stephen Roche and Shane Sutton are on the back of the field, and that, Mick, is magnificent.
Incredible as well, Phil, when you take into account that Stephen Roche is probably still recovering from a very poor Tour de France for him. His form was very bad. He had a fall, injured his knee, and so did Allan Peiper, and they both recovered as the series have gone on.
Well, Doyle brings the field over the line here, but it's the back we're interested in, because this is the sprint lap, and it will go to Allan Peiper, who is best placed of the 3 riders who have just lapped the field. So Peiper will win that sprint. Stephen Roche will take second place. Shane Sutton gets 2 points, and the best of the bunch was Tony Doyle at the other end. So Sid Barras now comes to the front. Doyle in second place. But what a nice position to be in now for those 3 riders. 1 lap ahead of the field tonight, knowing that in just 15 minutes time or so, just the 3 of them will fight out the finish. And Barras at the front, thinking of course of Phil Thomas, his Falcon teammate, and probably hoping to see him get a good placing in the bunch tonight.
Well, I'm in the pits with George Shaw of the rally team. You've got Malcolm Elliott in that bunch. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I don't think you can criticise the actual riders in the bunch, because they seem to be going at a fair pace tonight, but the 3 riders who have gone out there tonight and committed themselves, I think all credit to them.
George Shaw, thanks very much. We'll be back at Birmingham to see what other extraordinary developments lie in store in this race. Here at Birmingham, an extraordinary breakaway, and the second sprint of the evening has once again gone to Allan Peiper. Let's take a look at the overall position now. And there you see Allan Peiper, 10 points. He's had victory in both sprints this evening. Stephen Roche with 6, Shane Sutton with 4, Steve Jones and Tony Doyle with 1 apiece.
And now it's Peiper again on the attack. No sooner was he back in the field, and now he's trying again. Sid Barras, he has along for company. But Allan Peiper is here with a vengeance tonight. Remember, he missed his plane, or rather his plane was actually cancelled when he arrived at Brussels Airport last week. He never made Cardiff, but the riders now are regretting that, I think, because Peiper's taking his vengeance out on them. He calls Barras through to come and show him the pacemaking, but the reaction coming from the main field, and I think it's Stephen Roche doing the damage in the main pack.
Barras following Allan Peiper through there. Surely he must be there to protect Phil Thomas's interests. Although this break of 3 have lapped the field, Phil Thomas has still got to gain valuable points over Malcolm Elliott, who's leading by a very slender margin indeed. He only needs Malcolm Elliott to finish 2 or 3 places in front of Phil, and he loses his yellow jersey to him. So Sid Barras doing a lieutenant's job there, protecting Phil Thomas's interests, but keeping the tempo very high. He knows that Phil Thomas is tucked away there in the bunch. And there goes Stephen Roche attacking, with Allan Peiper chasing hard on his heels. Allan Peiper is just amazing me, Phil, tonight. He's just not letting anybody, he's not giving anybody any quarter, and he's following Stephen Roche. He knows Stephen very, very well because they raced together on the continent, and he knows Stephen's got form. They both recovered from illness approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago, and amazingly well, and they're riding terrifically well tonight.
Well, Roche has chosen a good time to stretch Peiper. The minute he's on the attack, as Peiper was, as soon as he was caught, Roche went, and the recuperative powers of Peiper were called upon yet again. But he seems to have the answer tonight. He's marshalled the attack of Roche very, very well indeed. And we haven't seen too much of Anderson, but he's up into 4th place now. Elliott and Thomas are riding in the top 10 and shadowing each other, as they always do throughout this series. And so Anderson goes round the corner, and the crowd recognise him. A little round of applause there for him, because Phil Anderson is remembered so well for his exploits here a year ago. But if your pictures are going a bit dark now, well, don't worry too much, because the weather here is clouding over and night is falling, and Anderson is in the lead.
And that attack of Phil Anderson has split this bunch again up Temple Row. Incredibly, it's amazing the speed, the average speed they keep going up this climb, Phil. They're just not letting up 1 inch. They're just accelerating from the bottom, staying out the saddle all the way up. It's a very bumpy climb. And again, that man Stephen Roche attacks on the left-hand side of the road there. Head down, but Allan Peiper sees it, and again he counters an attack from Stephen.
Well, it seems there are 2 very personal battles in the event tonight. One is between Stephen Roche and Allan Peiper, and here they are on the attack. Anderson trying to interfere with them in that white hat. The other personal battle, of course, is between the overall leader, Phil Thomas, and the man who's just 5 points behind, and that is Malcolm Elliott.
Shane.
So Roche goes round the corner. Sorry, Mick. Roche goes round the corner. And there's a crash there. There's a crash. Off the course has gone. It looks like Steve Jockin. Jockin is down in white. And Shane Sutton has gone. Shane Sutton has gone as well. Now that is an absolute tragedy because Sutton, of course, is one of the riders a lap ahead. So the British champion stands up. Phil Thomas is already in that leading group and away. He will have seen this crash. So too will Malcolm Elliott. But Shane Sutton a lap ahead with Stephen Roche, and Allan Peiper is in trouble. Now the rules are that Sutton is allowed 1 lap out of the race in which to recover from the problem, and the way this race is going tonight, and there he is being pushed off, but he can wait for the race, he's allowed approximately 40 seconds in which to recover from that tumble. The bell goes, and remember that the bell now is not for the 3 riders in the lead in this race, but for everybody else in the race, because we are now 6 laps from the finish. Phil Baton attacks to try and steal what will be 4th place on the night. Anderson chases him. Elliott chases Anderson. All these riders, don't forget, has seen the crash. They've seen Shane Sutton go into the barriers. Sutton will try and rejoin the race, but the attack on now by Phil Baton, because he wants 4th place tonight, and that will be worth 7 points on the overall classification. Baton giving it everything. Anderson chasing him.
Fortunately enough for Shane Sutton, that fall happened before 5 laps to go. Had it happened inside 5 laps to go, he wouldn't have been allowed that lap out through mechanical trouble, if indeed he has mechanical. And there he is looking back over his shoulder. Now by rights he should be able to rejoin this group that Phil Baton's heading.
So Baton, of course, coming now to the finish, and he's going to finish 4th on the night. The flag is up. It's a green and white to indicate lap riders finish here. Baton is 4th and Malcolm Elliott gets 5th. There's no sign at all of Phil Thomas, and this is important. Thomas is not in this group either, so my feelings are that Thomas, out of sight of our cameras, has fallen as well, which means that by the time, it depends in fact on the position of Allan Peiper, I suspect, but I think that will give the yellow jersey now to Malcolm Elliott. So that is absolutely amazing, because it was a crash a week ago in Cardiff that took the yellow jersey away from Malcolm Elliott and gave it to Phil Thomas, and it could well be the same thing tonight. So, although Phil Baton goes on, I'm imagining now he's going on for confirmation because nobody's told him to stop. But the rules are clear. Baton has finished tonight, and there should now be only 3 riders left in the race. And here they are. Stephen Roche first round the corner, then followed by Allan Peiper. Phil Anderson is also in this group, and I'm certain too. And there's Thomas, and he does look as though he's crashed. He's limping around the course. Well, this is an amazing race tonight. It's happened all in this last 4 laps. Only 3 of the riders in this group should still be here: Peiper, Roche and Sutton.
Isn't it ironic, Phil, that the same thing that took the yellow jersey off Malcolm Elliott's shoulders at Cardiff was through a fall inside 5 laps to go, and it looks as if the same thing could have happened to Phil Thomas here. Unfortunate, but it's very ironic that Phil Thomas could well have lost the yellow jersey to Malcolm Elliott by a slender margin as a result of that fall.
Well, the face on Allan Peiper, because he's coming round now to take 5 more points if he stays on the front in the 3rd and final King of the Sprints of the night. And nobody really to worry him, because Phil Anderson should now be out of this race. He's been lapped and the rules are quite clear. He retires from the event with 5 laps to go, with of course the rest of the field tonight, to leave these 3 heroes of the evening alone on the circuit around Birmingham. Peiper, Roche, Sutton. They're the 3 men we should watch now.
It doesn't appear that Shane Sutton's got any mechanical trouble with his bike, so if he's physically okay, my money's still on Shane Sutton to win this sprint, because he's done very little to help this breakaway. He's been there, which is his right is to be there to protect his team's interests. But unfortunately for him, he came off on that very tight corner. Perhaps the cone lane's a little bit too far out, but he came off in the corner. It's the same for every other rider in the race. That corner is there every lap, and they have to take it. They have to take the right line. If you misjudge it, you touch one of the cones, down you come. Unfortunately for Shane, it was a leading rider in front of him, and when you're sitting that tight onto them, there's no alternative but to go straight into the back of them. But he sat there. Hopefully he's all right. We've had no signs from the pits that he's injured physically, so my money's still on Shane Sutton.
Well, this is the sprint lap, the 3rd and final King of the Sprints tonight, and only 3 riders now left in this race tonight. The whole field has been eliminated by a fine piece of power riding, mainly coming from Allan Peiper and Stephen Roche. But you can't take any of the credit away now from Shane Sutton, because he's been on the ground tonight and now he's hanging on grimly to the back of this formidable tandem of Roche and Peiper. And this will be 5 points for the winner of this sprint. Peiper, of course, has won 2 tonight. He'll try for a third, I'm sure. He doesn't get it. Roche takes 5. Peiper gets 3. But that on the night will be an excellent result for Allan Peiper. And so after 3 sprints tonight, we can have a look at the result. And there's confirmation. Allan Peiper, 13 points, a massive lead. Stephen Roche, 11. Shane Sutton, 6. And Jones and Doyle from the bunch taking 1 each.
Stephen Roche signalling to the pits there. I think he's probably trying to ask what on earth is Shane Sutton doing there. But Shane Sutton's got every right to be there. He's had his lap out with that fall that happened. It's either mechanical trouble or a fall. You're allowed this lap out outside of 5 laps to go. But Stephen Roche doesn't think he should have had the lap out. He thinks he should have been pulled out of the race. It should be down to him and Allan. So I'd be surprised to hear his comments after the race.
Well, darkness is falling on us now. These riders are beginning to memorize the circuit. They've covered it 40 laps so far, 20 miles done, and virtually the same riders in the lead from start to finish. It was after only 4 laps tonight when Stephen Roche and Shane Sutton went clear. They were joined by Allan Peiper, and then after 12 miles in the lead, they lapped the field, they eliminated the field, and now with 1 lap to go, 3 riders in the lead, but still Roche points back at Shane Sutton. And on this occasion, Roche is wrong, because Sutton fell with 6 laps to go to the end of this race. Had he fallen with 4 laps to go, then he would certainly have been eliminated, but it doesn't apply tonight. Sutton is there by right.
I'm glad I'm not there sprinting that out tonight, because it's quite dark now, as you can see from some of the pictures. And if you don't keep your eye on the wheel in front of you in the sprint, especially when you're going flat out, and they'll be touching close on 40-45 mile an hour as they come down Colmore Road, it can be very dangerous, especially if it's very tight. Stephen Roche is attacking.
So Roche is choosing the final climb on the circuit today. That was the place where Roche had to try. He hasn't got the sprint of Peiper or Sutton, I don't think. Roche has tried now to break the will of Peiper. Peiper grits his teeth. He knows if he hangs on now for 100 metres, he might still find the sprint that will win him his first ever Kellogg's Championship event. He's never won any. He's ridden 6 so far, and Peiper goes on the right. Sutton follows him too. Roche is on the left, and Peiper gets it. Sutton is second. Roche takes 3rd place. What a wonderful sprint. No doubt about the winner. He missed the race a week ago. He's come back with a vengeance. Allan Peiper has won the stage, and he's also increased his lead in the King of the Sprints as well. So Peiper come down the straight now, rest, and well-deserved rest indeed. Throws a kiss to the crowd. Roche in 2nd place. As Peiper goes round the back of the circuit, he waves to a very, very large crowd here in the city centre. We can now see exactly how Peiper did it. Well clear, good half a length. Now, was Shane Sutton in 2nd place? And we'll see the move on here. Yes, he was. And in 3rd place, Stephen Roche from Dublin.
Anything Phil Anderson can do, you 3 can do better, it seems. Allan Peiper, what was the story of that extraordinary break?
Well, it's just like you say, there's 2 of us Australians where the only 2 racing sort of the European continent, and Phil did the big thing last year, and when you were talking about it before the start, I was motivated to do the same thing, because I sort of looked to Phil for my career. I try and follow what he's done, so this was just another one of those things.
Yeah. Now let's own up. Who's doing most of the work there, Steve?
I was. No, I think we shared the work between the 3 of us, and because when everyone's behind us, we say, well, maybe we can try and win, because I think when I started riding the Kelloggs races, it was kind of a criterion, but now it's become it's gotten into the blood now, and like
pretty big, isn't it?
But when you see all the people here, like here tonight and last week and everywhere, like it kind of gives a kind of motivation, and kind of makes you go a little harder, even when it hurts. Like in the last few laps, it was really hurting my legs, but with the people and the prestige of maybe winning, like, because Allan's a faster sprinter than I am, but still I had a chance of winning, and by winning here tonight would have been really something for me.
Tremendous to watch. Can I bring in Shane Sutton here? Shane, the problems at the end, the crash, tell us about that.
Oh, it was a lot to do with just stupidity, you know. I made a few mistakes. I was tired, and these guys were doing all the work, I knew I was a bit. I think I'm a bit quicker than him in the finish, but I just wasn't on, you know. And all I was doing was trying to stay up there for the sprinters jump for my teammate. But as you saw, Allan and Stephen were pouring it on all the way, and then I had them couple of crashes, and a bit of a pain in the ribs. But the better man won on the night, and Tom just glad it was an Australian.
Tremendous stuff from all three of you. Can I just say, in the confusion, Malcolm Elliott, can I just confirm that you've taken over the championship leadership? When you came into the pits, it was all very confused for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I'm still just absolutely flabbergasted. The same as last week, with 2 laps to go, me falling off, it was so hard to swallow. And I know how Phil must feel this week. But I think we've just had the same amount of bad luck now, and it just leaves it all down to the last race next week at Glasgow.
Yeah, Glasgow's going to be something, isn't it?
Yeah, 1 point lead, got to hang on to that.
Thanks very much, Malcolm Elliott.
And the most eventful night here in Birmingham, but there's the winner. Allan Peiper takes 10 points. Shane Sutton with 9. Stephen Roche with 8. Phil Baton 4th with 7. Important Malcolm Elliott is 5th with 6. And now we have confirmation that Malcolm Elliott is the new leader once again with 25. But look at the finish for Glasgow next week. Thomas in second with 24. Peiper with 24 also. And Allan Peiper with 40 points leads the king of the sprints convincingly.
So to Glasgow, will it be Elliott, Thomas or Peiper for the title? See how the championship is decided. Same time next week. Goodbye till then.
Over on ITV.